Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on an introduction to Appraiser Pro. My name is Matt Johnson. I do all of our training and corporate communication here at Safari P. And if you ever go to any of the trade shows that we do, you may have met me there. So hopefully I've gotten to meet a couple of you. Thanks for joining us. A couple of things about this webinar before we get started. If you have any questions, there is going to be a chat that will be over on the right-hand side of your screen. So over there. And that is the way that you can ask questions, interact with me. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know if you have any questions or anything like that. If you are watching this webinar after the fact, then you can still participate. You can contact me directly via email. That email address is simply training@sfrep.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. And if you're watching this and if you're watching this live and you're not signed into YouTube, you can also use that email address as well. Now, when you are moving over to Appraiser Pro, if you need any technical assistance, the best way to get in touch with them is through the telephone. That's going to be 800-644-4051. There are some other ways that you can get into touch with them as well, and I'll go over those later on in this webinar because it'll be part of some of the features that you can use in Appraiser Pro as far as getting help. Now, if you are moving over from Appraiser Classic, first of all, welcome. Second of all, do understand that there is no extra charge for you using Appraiser Pro. So if you want to move over, all you have to do is contact our sales office. You can do that by using that same telephone number, 800-644-4051, select option 1, and then they will be able to assist you in getting it set up on your account, and then they will send you an email that will let you know how you can install it if you want to do it yourself, or they can set up a time with one of our tech support people who can then log in and they can get you started directly. Okay, so once again, if you have any questions, just use the email or use the chat that is over on the right-hand side. Also, if you want to make this window bigger, you have two options. First of all, you can click on the little elongated rectangle icon that will be down around here in the window, and that will make it, that'll put it into the theater mode. That will make the window larger, and it will move your chat from the side over down to the bottom. Or you can hit the two brackets. That will make everything go full screen, which will make everything easier to see, but just keep in mind that you will lose the ability to chat. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get started. We're going to take a look at my screen here. And as you can see here, if you're moving over from Appraiser Classic, if you're already a user of SFREP, you can keep Appraiser Pro and Appraiser Classic on your system at the same time. They can coexist on your computer at the same time. There is no problem in doing this. As a matter of fact, you can start an appraisal in Appraiser Classic and then move it over to Appraiser Pro. And you can even be working on something in Appraiser Pro, and then if you feel that you need to go over back to Classic for some reason, you can even go back over to Classic from Pro. There's some caveats with that, of course, because what that's going to do is that's going to mean that you're not going to be able to have a lot of the features that you had in Pro. So some of those extra formatting forms that aren't supported in Classic will get stripped out if you do that. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and crank up Appraiser Pro now. I haven't done this on my computer today, so it may take it a second to load. The first time it always takes a couple of seconds to load because it's having to load everything. If you open it up, and by the way, you can't see the splash screen. It's over on my other monitor. But it will take it a second to load that first time. After that, it will load much faster because parts of it will already be running in memory. So when you first open up Appraiser Pro, you're going to be in this area called the Backstage. And that's what Microsoft calls it. I tend to like to call it, the super file menu, I guess would be what I would call it. And the reason for that is that if I click on this little arrow here up in the upper left-hand corner, it takes me to the editing area for Appraiser Pro. Now, I don't have a report open right now, but this is where you would actually, be editing. And to go back, I click on the file menu, which you may see has a little black background on it to kind of set it apart from the rest of the menu items. So when I click on that, I go back to this area called the Backstage. So Backstage, super file menu, whatever you want to call it. I called it super file menu mainly because all the stuff that was in the file menu in Appraiser Classic is over here in Appraiser Pro. Now, when you first start Appraise-It Pro, you're going to be in this Welcome to Appraise-It Pro screen. And this is just a way for us to be able to talk to you without having to send you email or call you or have you call us. It's just a way for us to communicate with you. And here you can see that we're just kind of giving you some news information. There aren't going to be images here or GIFs or anything that's going to be overly distracting. And we don't update it terribly often. You can see the last time we updated it was back on August 10th of this year. And then prior to that, it was back in April. So this is just a place where you can actually just kind of see what's going on. The next one is going to be, we're using the menu over here on the left-hand side. So that was welcome. Over here next is going to be new. This is just like File New and Appraise-It Classic or whatever software you might be moving over from. And this is where you're going to start a new report from. So on the left-hand panel here, it's going to list all of the different major form types that you can start an appraisal from. So every appraisal has to be based on a primary form, and this is the list of primary forms. It is a long list, so it is categorized into different categories, and individual report types can show up under multiple different categories. So for instance, the 1004 can show up under Fannie Mae, it'll also show up under UAD, and it'll show up under Freddie Mac as well. So keep that in mind. Up here is frequently used. These will be probably the top, I think it's 10 reports that you use. I don't use this to do actual reports. I usually use it for testing and demo purposes. So I've really only got one that's showing up right now under frequently used. But as I started using different forms, this will start putting whatever my most commonly used forms will be over here. If that wasn't enough, you can also search. So if I'm looking for a 2055, I can come up here to this search box right here at the top center, and I can just type in 2055. Now it'll show me, I don't even have to hit enter, it'll show me all of the different 2055s that are contained in Appraise-It Pro. In this case, there's a UAD one. It's also listed under Fannie Mae, which also includes the older 2055s. There's the QAR 2055, non-lender versions of the 2055 are also showing up under non-lender. And there's also the legacy forms, either the pre-2005 forms that we had. So some people still use that for non-lender work or for whatever. So we keep it in there for backwards compatibility. If I want to see everything again, I just click on the X and now I'm seeing everything. And I can use text in here too. So if I was looking for condo forms, I could just type in condo. And now it's going to show me all the reports that reference condo in either their title, form ID, or description. Now, in order to open up one of these reports, all I need to do is simply double click on it, and that will open up the default template. If you're wondering what a template is, I will go over that in a little bit more detail, but for right now, just think of it as a skeleton from Appraise-It Classic. If you're coming over from another software, you'll know what a template is. It's pretty self-explanatory. But think of it for right now as a skeleton, although templates are much easier to deal with. They're much more robust and they're much more stable. Okay, but this will just open up a blank template that you can then use to build your report from. I can also single click on it and it'll show me all of the templates that I've created along with that default template. And all the default template is the main pages of the report plus some map pages and some photo pages, kind of a good starting point for you. And if you want to open up that default template with it just having the bare bones, just the main parts of the form of the report, you can uncheck this little checkbox down here at the bottom and it'll open basically a bare bones version of the UAD 1004, and then you can build it from there. But if you've already created some templates, and I'll show you how to do that here in a little while, if you single click on it, it will display all the different templates that are available for that particular report type, plus the default one. And if I want to open something from here, I can either double click on it or I can single click on it and then click on Create Report. Both ways accomplish the same thing. Next, we have Open. You probably won't come in here too often unless it's to come in here for recent reports. And this can be really helpful if you're looking for a report that you were working on a day or two ago, maybe a week ago, and you don't want to go through the whole hassle of searching for it and narrowing down everything. If you just, you opened it up recently, you can just come in here to recent reports, find what you're looking for, double click on it and open it. Over here in the upper left are the Open Report, Open Classic Report, and Open Mizmo Document. Open Report you probably will not use too often. That is just there because it needs to be there. But most of the time, what people are going to do is they're going to do a search for the report, or they're going to come over here to recent reports, and that's what they're going to open up. Open Classic Report you might use a little bit more often. So if a colleague sent you a Classic Report, or you need to go find a Classic Report that's on your desktop or something like that, you can use Open Classic Report. If you were using Classic and you moved over to Pro, though, you can still search your old Classic reports, as they will be added into the index, into the database for Appraise It Pro, and they'll be treated just like regular Appraise It Pro files. So Appraise It Pro is fully compatible with Appraise It Classic. You can open up its files, no problem. And then finally, there's Open Mizmo Document. This is very helpful in one of two cases. Either you're moving over from another software vendor, in which case, if you've been archiving your Mizmo XML documents, then you'll be able to open them up in Appraise It Pro. As a matter of fact, we distribute Appraise It Pro to lenders and AMCs as a Mizmo XML viewer. And it's just like a stripped down version of Appraise It Pro that only allows you to open and view and print Mizmo documents. So fully Mizmo compliant, and you can open up those Mizmo XML documents by just going here, or our tech support can copy all of your old Mizmo files from another software type, like ACI, Alamode, whatever. We can copy all those into a subfolder of Appraise It Pro, then they'll be indexed into the database, and you'll be able to open them and search for them as if they were regular Appraise It Pro files. And then finally, we have templates. Open Template you probably won't use very often, but Open Classic Template you may use. And you may have been wondering, hey, I've got all of these Appraise It Classic templates. Are those going to be converted for me automatically? The answer to that is no. There's a specific reason for that. When we originally were testing out Appraise It Pro with our beta testing group, they discovered that they don't actually want all their old skeletons to be converted over, because a lot of people had just old skeletons in their closet. See what I did there? They had old skeletons in their closet, and they were out of date and they were corrupted and this and that, and it was just a mess. So what we do here is we recommend that you go ahead and create new skeletons from scratch for two reasons. One, you're going to end up having nice, clean skeletons, nice, non-corrupted, templates. If you do this, also in creating templates from scratch, you're going to learn Appraise It Pro very quickly. So it's a good way for you to get practice in building a report in Appraise It Pro, because that's the big difference between Classic and Pro, is how you build a report. As a matter of fact, in a couple of minutes, I'll let you know when we get there, we're going to kind of detail how reports are structured and when you create them and when you edit them, because it's different than Appraise It Classic. And that's the big thing you really need to take away from this webinar. And I'll let you know when we get there. So eat your Pop-Tart now, drink your coffee now, because when we get to that part, that's where you're going to want to pay extra attention. But we do understand that there are classic skeletons that are very complicated and you don't want to create them from scratch again. So we do give you the option of opening a classic skeleton. So you can just open it up using this selection, browse to it, load it in. It gets converted into a regular Appraise It Pro file. You can make changes to it and then save it as a skeleton. And really that's all a skeleton is, that's all. You can create a template out of it. And in Appraise It Pro, that is all a template is. It is just a regular Appraise It Pro report file that has been promoted to template status. So you can basically start with a blank report file, add the different addenda that you want into it, the different minor forms, everything, pre-fill out stuff, put images in there, whatever you want to do. And then you just save it as a template. And then that's your starting point from here on out. Next, going over to search. This is a fully customizable search. It is a very fast SQL search as opposed to what was in Appraise It Classic. But very similar to Appraise It Classic. And if you've been using Appraise It Classic, this will be very familiar to you. The more fields that you fill out here, the more targeted your search results are going to be. So if you put in a partial street address or street number, if you put in a zip code, if you put in a county, a census tract, whatever you can do to narrow down your results, the more information you put in here, the more narrow and targeted your search results are going to be. So that when you do a search now, I just reset this. This is the test version of Appraise It Pro, actually. So I don't have anything showing up at the moment in here. But if you put in information here, you click on search, it's going to show you all of your selections in a grid here. And you can actually scroll out here to the right And if you select one, it will give you the front view photo and some key pertinent details in here to make sure that you know that you have the right one. And then you can just simply double click on it to open it. Or you can single click on it and then click on open report. Does the same thing. Doesn't really matter. This also is taken care of for you automatically by Appraise-It Pro, just like it was in Appraise-It Classic. So as you're using files, reports, as you're creating files and reports, whenever they're saved, they're automatically indexed and added in and updated in the database so that you always have the most up-to-date information, and you're able to search on all of the matching addresses that are contained in a report. So you're not just searching for the subject, you can also search for an address and see that it was used maybe 3 times as a comp, and maybe it was used as a listing once, whatever. It's going to show you all that information here. Then finally, we're going to go to settings. I generally recommend, if you are not a tinkerer, that you may want to only come in here when you are with one of our tech support people. But if you do want to come in here and tinker around, you can. Just come in here and you can make your selection and then change some settings. I would say, though, that if you do change something, you may want to write down where it was and what you changed. That way, if you don't like the result of that change, you'll know exactly where to come back and change it back. This stuff right here is ghosted out mainly because I don't have a report open right now. Also, this stuff is listed in the menuing system. It's usually, most of it's under home. So I don't really go over it here because most people aren't going to use it here. But these two selections, new window and exit, you will use. Exit's very self-explanatory, just closes the program, does the same thing as if you hit the X in the upper right-hand corner up here. But new window will open up a new instance, a new window of Appraise-It Pro. So you can have multiple reports open, as many as you want. You can put each of those reports in its own window on a separate monitor and copy and paste between them. You can work on 2 reports at the same time, whatever you want to do. And the great thing about Appraise-It Pro is it's the only 64-bit appraisal software on the market right now. And now it does have a 32-bit version if you are running an older computer, but as long as your computer has more than 4 gigs of RAM and it is newer than, say, 2011 or so, it's going to have a 64-bit version of Windows in it, and we take advantage of that. So we run natively on the 64-bit platform, and we also support more than 4 gigs of RAM. So if you've got 16 gigs of RAM on your computer system, like I have on this one here, then Appraise-It Pro is able to leverage that extra RAM to keep the program from having to swap out to the hard drive, and it makes it just all the much faster, or nowadays to the solid state drive. Okay, so let's come back over here to open. We're going to select Pro Sample, I believe. So we'll open this up. I just simply double clicked on it. And then now we're going to get transferred over to the editing window. So if you have used any appraisal software, including Appraise-It Classic, this will look very familiar to you. This editing area here in the center is what's called a WYSIWYG editor, and that stands for what you see is what you get. First letter of each of those spells out WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Basically, this is just a representation of the paper form, and then you're typing into the fields. Now, of course, this will all go away with UAD 2.0 and the dynamic forms that will come with it. Of course, we will be we're working on all of that now with the GSEs, and when all of that gets finalized, we'll start doing videos and showing you how all that's going to work. But they're basically going to be dynamically created forms. So this all will still be here for backwards compatibility, and for those of you that are not doing UAD 2.0 reports, but UAD 2.0 reports will also be fully supported by Appraise-It Pro. They will not be supported by Appraise-It Classic. So that will be the death nail for Appraise-It Classic when the UAD 2.0 forms comes out. So getting started with Appraise-It Pro now is a good idea. Okay, so here's where your editing window is, and you can scroll up and down. We're currently looking at the main form. So as you look at a form, it will be in its own tab up here, kind of like a web browser. Currently, we have one tab open. And through that form has 6 pages. I can scroll through all 6 of those pages. What about the rest of the report? Well, that's where this report panel comes in. And this is where we're going to concentrate for the next few minutes. And this is what I was telling you about earlier. This is the part that you really need to pay attention to if you're moving over from Appraise-It Classic. And that's these panels. Now, The panels, or a panel, was already in Appraiser Classic. It was the UAD panel. We've expanded on that, and there are now 4 panels visible. There's actually 5. I'll tell you about the 5th one here in a minute, but it's kind of hidden. But over here we have, on the left-hand side by default, we have Report, Validator, and on the right-hand side we have Responses and Format. Now, first of all, Format. When you are not in a formatted field, this is giving you a color key of all the different colors that you'll see in the form. When you move into a formatted field, which it says down here are green fields, so let's come down here to the grid. I move into a formatted field, and now the format panel turns into the UAD panel. So if you've been using Appraiser Classic, you'll feel familiar here. This is the UAD panel. For those of you who are coming over from another software vendor, we're a little bit different in that we allow the user to type directly into the field because we've all been using UAD for so long. We've memorized all of this formatting. So you can just type directly into the field, use responses, whatever you want to do. As long as you have the formatting correct, then when you tab out, nothing will happen. It'll just stay green. But if you make a mistake, let's say we put K there, tab out, that's going to turn red. So then it tells me I need to go back in and change that. Now I change it and it turns green. That is part of the validator, which we'll go over here in a minute. But that's the format panel in a nutshell. We'll come back to it, but that's the long and short of it. But let's get back over here to the report panel, which is what we really want to concentrate on for the next few minutes. The report panel is nothing more than a table of contents. This is the contents of your report and the order in which those contents appear in the report. So this is the big difference between Appraiser Classic and Appraiser Pro. In Appraiser Classic, you built your report at the end after you filled everything out. And you basically had this giant smorgasbord of different forms and addenda that you could select from the contents menu. And you had to go search for it, find it, and then fill it out. And then you had to remember that that's what you filled out. In Appraiser Pro, we kind of reverse that. So in Appraiser Pro, you build the report at the beginning and as you go along so that by the time you're done with it and you're ready to print or create a MISMO XML out of it, you don't have to do anything other than just create the MISMO XML because you've set the contents and the order of the contents ahead of time. You've been doing that while you've actually been building the report. So over here, I'm going to make this, by the way, these panels are fully customizable. I go over that in our Appraiser Pro tips and tricks, which is kind of a companion webinar to this webinar. It's kind of the part 2 to this webinar. But for right now, I'm going to show you, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. These are the contents of our report, and these are the order in which they are in. So because it's the order in which they're in, I can change around this order very easily. All I have to do is click and drag it. So if I wanted to put the flood map after the invoice for some reason, I can do that. If I like to have the location map at the very beginning of the report, I just click and drag it up to the beginning. So it's very easy to change the order of your report. Let's say I need to add something. Let's first of all, let's take something out. This is on a mountainside. There's no chance of flooding, so I'm not going to do a flood map. So I'm going to select flood map by single clicking. I accidentally double clicked it because my mouse has been having sensitivity problems. So I'm just going to single click flood map. And I'm going to come up here to remove and say yes. And now flood map is out of there. But what if I wanted to add the flood map back in? That's where this little add button comes in up here at the top. So you just saw me use remove. Now we're going to do add. So I'm going to click on add. And a separate window comes up. This is the Add Remove Forms window. And so from in here, I can actually do a search for a form. So let's say we want to put flood back in. So we're going to type in FLOOD. There's the flood map. It's showing up twice here, once under maps, once under frequently used. And then there's also this FEMA flood hazard determination form. Flood map is what I actually want. So I'm going to click it and I am going to drag it over here and I'm going to put it right below location map. So there it is. But if I want, I can move it around in here again. This right here is nothing more than a representation of this over here. So once I've got it where I want it, and I could add additional if I want, but when I'm done, just click on save and close. And now there's flood map. And if I want to look at it, I just simply double click it and there it is. And if I want to add a flood map, I just simply double click here and it'll open up my flood interface. And so I don't need this tab anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and click on X. That's not removing it from the report. That is just closing the tab, just like in Chrome or Edge or whatever web browser you use. So now we know how to move this, reorder this. We also know how to add stuff. We know how to remove stuff, but what are these little icons on the left-hand side? And you'll see right here, there's a star. Others will have a little padlock next to them. Some others have this green plus. Well, first of all, this green plus may look familiar because it's very much to this ad. So you can probably guess what this is used for. If I want to put additional, like say invoices, maybe I need 2 invoices in here, I can come up here to add and use this interface to do it. But what I can also do is just simply click on the plus next to invoice. And now it's going to use add invoice 2. So if I need to invoice 2 different parties, I can do that. Sketch, there's sketch 2. What about comps? So if I come down here, sales comps 4 through 6 are listed here. If I click plus there, it's going to add comp 7 through 9 for me automatically. Plus, it's going to add the comp photo addenda to that as well. And you can do that to listings as well. And of course, if I don't need them anymore, I can click on 7 through 9. I can click on remove, say yes, come down here, remove the photos as well, say yes, and now they're out of there. If you keep clicking that green plus next to sales comps 4 through 6, it's going to keep adding additional comp pages. In Appraiser Pro, there is no limit to how many comps, listings, any of that you can add into a report like there were in Classic. You can add as many as you want, but just keep in mind that's going to balloon the size of your report, plus whoever you're sending the report to may only support like a certain number of comps. So make sure you know that before you go and adding additional in there. All right. Finally, there's this little rename. You'll notice right now it's ghosted out. But if I do select something that is renameable, say sketch 2, I could call this detached garage sketch. And there we go. Cool thing about this now, I don't have to remember what sketch 2 was. I've named it. So now I know exactly what it is without even having to open it. So you can't rename everything, but on ones that you can rename, this will go unghosted and you'll be able to use it. All right. So that's the long and short of it. That is the crux of what you really need to know when you're moving over from Classic to Pro. Once you understand that, everything else is just going to fall into place. Play around with Appraiser Pro and you'll learn everything. Okay. Next, Validator. The rest of these panels, we're going to go pretty quick over. Validator is very simple. There are 2 types of validation happening. There is the real-time validation, which is, kind of checking your formatting and your math and things like that. A good way to see that, I know this isn't the big of a deal, but let's say if I didn't put OH and I put that's a HY. I don't know, put HY in there. Notice that it turns red because HY is not a capital, or it's not a state rather. If I come back in here and I put BC, BC is a Canadian province. It is not a state. But if I come back and I put OH again, it's happy with that. I can also put PR for Puerto Rico. I can put GU for Guam. It's happy with all of those, but just make sure that's a standard abbreviation. And that basically happens everywhere. If you use the wrong formatting, if you forget a semicolon or a comma or something like that, it will turn red and it will tell you what you need to change. And if you happen to be elsewhere in the report, when you notice that there's a hard stop over here, it'll tell you what the problem is. Hard stop, state. So select that. And now it's telling me state must have a valid 2-character U.S. state abbreviation, example, NC. All right. Well, instead of jumping back over there, I can just simply double click. It'll take me to where that error is. And now I can just make the change. Oops. There we go. And now it's happy. The other type of validation is the comprehensive validation. So if you need to, you're not going to want to do a comprehensive validation until you get to the end of the report. You're done with the report. Otherwise, everything's just going to go nuts. Everything's going to turn red because you haven't finished everything. So only do this when you're done with the actual report itself. You just click on validate. And then just like you did before, like I just showed you, any hard stops, reds that come up, you can just double click on them. It'll take you to where that violation is. And then it'll tell you how to change it and fix it. Okay. Now there's also a rule set pull down here. There are 2 types of rule sets supported, UCDP, which is regular UAD 1.0, and also FHA. FHA and UAD are very similar. There are some small little differences. It will remember what your selected rule set is from one time to another. So if you do an FHA, remember that when you start a regular 1004 to come back in here and change it back to UCDP. Next is responses. So I have some responses created here in the city field. And once you have your responses created, there's a couple different ways to use them. First of all, when I get into the city field, I can come over here and just simply double click and it will put something in there. I can also begin typing. This is my favorite way. Do G, it's going to autofill Gastonia. I tab out. There it is. It's fixed for me. And I can also assign them F keys. So if I want to use Concord, I just hit F4 and it fills in Concord for me. So let's put Charlotte in there. Changes it. There we go. Okay. So that's how the responses work. Setting up responses. Let's say I want to add Dallas, not Dallas, Texas. This is Dallas, North Carolina. It's a little suburb of Charlotte, distant suburb of Charlotte. So I type in Dallas. If I want to add this, I just come to manage responses. It's already in there. I can give it a title if I want. Usually you would only give a title to multi-line responses, but for a single line, you don't really need to. And I can choose whether I'm going to give it an F key. I'm going to be using it a lot, so I'm going to assign it to F5. Click on save, click on close, and now F5 is available. So now when I get into that field, I can just hit F5 and it'll put Dallas in there for me. Now remember I told you a little while ago that there's 4 panels visible, but there's actually 5 because one of them is hidden. That hidden one is tabbed over here with the responses panel, and that's help. For those of you who have been doing appraising for many, many years, the help is not going to be very helpful for you. But if you do have any people that are helping you do reports, or you have some people who are doing, if you have some trainees with you or something like that, when they're just starting out, this will be helpful for them. And there is help text available for every single field in almost every report. And it will tell you exactly what you need to put in there and what the proper formatting is. So let them know that that is available to them. And then finally, there is the format panel, which you've kind of already gone over. There's apply and clear. However, there's other ways to do that. That's more just maintaining backwards compatibility with Appraise-It Classic. But for the most part, if you want to clear something, you just double click in, or you just, slide and click everything and just click on delete, and it's going to do the same thing. Now, a couple of more things I want to go over, and then we'll take some questions. So if you have any questions that you already have now, go ahead and use that chat that's either to the right or down below, depending upon how you have your screen set up, and feel free to ask them. And then once again, if you need to, you can always send an email to training@sfrep.com if you're watching this after the fact. And by the way, if you came in late, I did see there were a couple of people that did come in late. You can always time shift. So just like in your DVR, you can go right back to the very beginning of this and you can watch it from the beginning. And then if you're coming in here after the fact, if you didn't have time to come to it live, you can always watch one of these webinars using the same link in the email that was sent to you or the link that you saw on Facebook, and you can watch it all over again. You can also go to our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/SFREP, and you can rewatch all of our live webinars there by clicking on the live tab up at the top, and you'll see all of our previous webinars. Okay. So a couple more things I want to show you, then we'll get to questions. So go ahead and get your questions in now. Down here in the lower right-hand corner is your server status. So if I click on this, it will show me what are the status of all of our online, our online services. Right now, everything's online, but if anything was either degraded, it would turn yellow, or if it was a problem, then it would turn red. And then I can click on this and it will open up a web page, which I'll pull over here to my other monitor, which is status.sfrep.com, which you can go to even if you're not using Appraise-It Pro, and it'll let you know when there was any kind of problem that we had. Looks like there was a problem down here on September 11th. If I click on that, it'll tell you it was an issue with Inspect-A-Lot, CompLink, and a couple other things. So if you were wondering if things were down in the past, you can go back and look. Otherwise, it will give you information on, if anything is down, it will give you some information as to like, okay, well, that particular service, we're hoping to have it back up in an hour. We'll give you more information at that point. You can also just go to our Facebook page and our X, what used to be called Twitter, now for some reason it's called X. So if you go to X, you can go to our page, which is @SFREP, and you'll also see it there. So whatever social media you like to use, you can get there. Up here at the top are our menuing system, and we use the same menu, what's called a ribbon menu, that is used in a lot of different Windows programs, including Microsoft Office. So if you use Office, this will seem very familiar to you. So you can go to, say, Tools here. These are all of your local tools, things like Sketchit, Image Manager, Comp Manager. I don't really go over Sketchit, Image Manager, and Comp Manager in this webinar because those are identical to Abrasive Classic. But if you do want additional help on that, we do have videos on our YouTube page, also at support.sfrep.com, and you can watch those videos. Or you can just email me, and I'll be happy to get you set up with something, okay? Orders, let's go to services, are our online-based services. So Appraiser Genie Cloud, Get Census Tract, Street Maps, Flood Maps, Market Analysis, Build Facts. My favorite, Inspect a Lot. And then also Profit.ai has a real good one as well. So if you're wondering what any of these are, you can just go to support.sfrep.com and you can do a search for them, and we have a video on all of these. Orders is how you can send orders. So there's Appraisal Port, which is replacing AI Ready. This is going to be something that if you're on Classic and you do use Appraisal Port or AI Ready, you're going to need to upgrade to Appraiser Pro, because the the AI Ready program is going to be what's called deprecated, or it's not going to be used anymore by CoreLogic. So we had to update it, and it's been renamed Appraisal Port, and that's what you'll use. It's going to have a new interface and everything. And then finally, there is the support tab. Come in here if you want to check for updates. You can check server status, which I just showed you. You can also do the refer a friend. You can send feedback. So if there's something you want to see in Appraiser Pro or something you don't like, you can let us know by clicking on that. It'll open up a web page that you can then send a message to us with. And then over here under technical support, there is the knowledge base. That's going to take you to support.sfrep.com. There's also chat if you want to chat with one of our tech support people. Often that's the best way to get in touch with them, because a support person can be on the phone, plus they can be chatting with 3 different people at the same time. So it's a way to get help much quicker. You can also email support, and then these are our remote assistance selections if you need to have them log into your computer. And then finally, on the web, SFREP's website, our blog that we have. There's also our Facebook page, Twitter, and of course our YouTube channel. Okay, so with all of that, does anyone have any questions? Once again, if you're watching this after the fact and you have any questions, all you got to do is just go to your email and email us directly, training@sfrep.com. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. If you're live here, you can use the chat. And remember that you can always go to support.sfrep.com or our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/sfrep. And you can watch all of our previous videos that we've done. Plus, you can click on the live tab and watch all of these previous webinars as well. So I'm seeing I don't have any questions. That is great. I know sometimes people are shy. Also, sometimes people just want to email them in, and maybe I've answered all your questions, and that would also be cool too. So I hope that all of you have a wonderful rest of your week. Stay safe out there when you are out viewing properties, and beat the heat, beat the cold, whatever season it might be. And I want to thank you guys for showing up and spending a little bit of time with me. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks a lot.